Townhomes built on a cemetery. Long story. When we were young, my boyfriend, now husband, and I had a lot of issues in our first apartment. Stuff like a woman throwing a lit cigarette in a can in the garages and starting a fire, an older woman turning on her oven but forgetting it was filled with Tupperware and starting a fire, and the apartment across the hall, which had some tenant issues and in which we later found out was the apartment a man hanged himself in. It wasn't well maintained, and so we decided to move. My husband found some split-level townhomes he just loved, so we quickly moved in. These apartments were all connected like row houses, and we had gotten an end unit. There was a garage that stood out in the front, and a door in it that connected to the entryway. On the side of the garage was a walkway that also led to a door opening to the entryway. Once inside, the two doors were very close to each other, with the side door perpendicular, and if you entered through the side, you could see straight downstairs into our bedroom, but entering from the garage, you'd face upstairs and see the wall of the dining space. Down those stairs, perpendicular to the main bedroom, so facing the same way as the side entrance, was my 3-year-old son's room. Everything seemed great for months. We enjoyed the space. The upstairs living area was large with a kitchen in the back, and a huge window faced out onto the street also showing our side door. The other windows were only in the back of the upstairs, with none on the side of the living room area or dining room. I apologize for the long description, but it pertains to what occurred. It began when my husband was watching TV in the living room, and I was downstairs in the bedroom. A loud knocking started on the side of the house. This was a crazy pounding, so loud that I heard it downstairs, and assumed my husband was pounding on the wall with a hammer, putting up a picture or something. He assumed it was me doing the same. After hearing this for a few minutes, he walked to the edge of the stairs and called to me, asking what I was doing. I went up the downstairs set of steps and asked what he was doing. We discussed the sound, but couldn't figure it out and moved on. The next time, we were both watching TV upstairs. At the time, he worked weird hours, so we'd spend time together late at night, when my son was asleep, catching up on Rock of Love, or whatever stupid show was on. The pounding started as we sat, and this time, it was so obnoxious, so aggressive, the pictures on the outside wall began to shake and rattle with each boom. Now again, this is upstairs, and the only window is on the other side of room facing the street / our entrance. We looked at each other and just sat, silently, waiting for it to end. I started getting upset, because I thought my picture frames might fall and break. He told me to stay put and listen, and he'd go look to see if there was a ladder against our house outside or something. Of course nothing was there, but the pounding stopped as he left, so I joined him outside as we searched for any reasonable explanation. There wasn't one. The next time was a little weirder. He was at work, and I was home waiting for him with my son and dog. Now every time there was a noise at the door, my little dog would run over to the living room window and look at the door. Then she'd run downstairs to greet whoever came. So this night, he was still about 1 hour away from getting home, and we were just watching a show. But remember, he had weird hours, so sometimes he was early, sometimes late. Suddenly, we heard the door knob rattle. My son and dog got excited, and my first thought was that my husband was early, but why wouldn't he come through the garage? They ran to the window to check. My dog was confused. My son looked back at me and said, "Dad is not home." Okay. The door knob downstairs continues to rattle and shake more and more violently, so I got up and peered out the window. No one was there. I grabbed a jacket for my boy, scooped up the dog, and quietly we made our way downstairs. I opened the door to the garage and waited inside the dark for a bit, but the door continued to rattle for a few moments and suddenly stopped. Now I have a choice to make: open that garage door and run like hell with my family, or wait and hope whatever it is doesn't get inside. I choose the former. I opened that garage door and we bolted, clicking it shut behind us. We found refuge with a neighbor, where I asked to wait until my husband got home. She slightly downplayed it all, giving me that, "Oh, a car I saw ya" kind of look, until he arrived home. When he did, we left her house and walked inside with him through the garage. We put my son to bed, and I told him everything. Since my husband had been going through this with me, he believed me. We opened the garage and walked over to the walkway to investigate, again, trying to find an explanation. This was winter, and it had been snowing that night. The walk was covered in snow and not yet shoveled. Halfway up the walk were footprints leading to my door, standing at the door. Then they turned around and went halfway back down. We checked everywhere surrounding the property, and those footprints simply disappeared. None leading into the grass, none leading off the side of the house. It was as though someone had materialized in the middle of the sidewalk to the house, walked up, turned around and disappeared. We went back in through the garage. Now at this point, we were getting convinced that something was happening here. So we began talking with a few other neighbors we knew. First was an elderly couple whose granddaughter played with my son. They told us their home was straight haunted, and they've just lived with it. Things like pounding in the kitchen, cabinets opening, and noises from their second bedroom were normal. They said it was true of the whole complex, and everyone knew and experienced it. Next we spoke with a retired cop down a few homes. He told us his experience was also in the spare bedroom. He would hear crazy slamming noises, as though someone was trashing the whole room. He thought someone had tossed all his furniture around. When he opened the door, the noises stopped and nothing was touched. He said this event repeated often. After these discussions, we decided to look into things. We considered contacting a paranormal team, but first, we researched the area. You know, everyone always jokes about Indian burial grounds and such, so I wanted to be sure we weren't just screwed here, considering the whole complex had issues. Somehow I managed to pull up an old property map of the area we were in. The map clearly showed the tiny lake/pond across the street from the homes, but where the buildings now stood, it showed a cemetery. Again, we considered a paranormal team, but before we decided to act, it got worse. We had still had the occasional pounding over time, but nothing more severe than the doorknob issue. Well, one night we were in bed, with our room facing the stairs, remember, and my son just walks out of his room and up the steps. It was really late at night, and there was a bathroom downstairs, so no reason for him to go upstairs in the dark alone. I called to him, but he ignored me and kept walking. So we both start calling his name, but he never looked back. I bolted out of the bed and caught him when he was about 1/3 of the way up TH's second set of stairs. I grabbed his little body and turned him to me, asking, "What are you doing?" He blinked a few times, as if registering my face, and calmly replies, "You were calling me, so I came." He was so sincere, my heart dropped. I stared up into the overwhelming darkness at the top of those steps, and I started to feel rage along with me fear. Since I didn't see anything, I guided him back down to bed and asked him what exactly happened. He told me he woke up, hearing his name being called from upstairs. He said he started going, and as he hit the second set of stairs, he heard, "Come here, Josh," and assumed it was us. He said it just sounded like a deep voice, but he probably didn't think much of it being so small and just woken up. I moved him out the next day. Once he was gone, I lost my shit. I ran around that house screaming, "Don't you dare come for my baby. You knock it off and leave him alone. He's mine." We started looking for a new place to live while he stayed with my parents. Since the hubbub of getting ready to move, and luckily our lease was nearly up, there wasn't much excitement, just occasional pounding. The worst of it was one day when I stopped packing to take a nap, as I get severe migraines and basically have regular headaches all the time. I got comfortable and shut my eyes, and right next to my head, a huge pounding collapse startled me, as if someone got on a ladder and dropped a stack of old children's hardcover textbooks next to my head. I opened my eyes. Nothing fell, nothing there. I sat straight up, again just sick of this nonsense, and I bellowed, "Enough. You won. We are leaving. We are moving soon, and you know it. Now I'm trying to rest, so shut the hell up and let me sleep." That was the end. Once I announced my disdain, let go of my frustration, and clearly acknowledged our retreat, everything ceased. Not another sound until we moved. The only issue that we have had, whether relates or not, has been with my son. Shortly after we moved, he began seeing things. One day, he bolted out of the new house mid-sentence to chase a shadow person. He didn't know what they were called, but I knew from his description that went from our basement to outside. He has forgotten that, and we've worked hard to help him ignore his gift, but it's still there, and just a few nights ago, he confided in me that the energy he uses to ignore the spirits is exhausting. I feel so bad for him, because he's 16 now, struggles with that, and I can't imagine how hard it is to constantly have a block up. And I also hope it all wasn't started with that stupid townhouse. The town is just as haunted as the woods. Part 1. I live in a small town, right on the edge of a very popular wooded area that attracts a number of paranormal investigators every year. There's been multiple stories of the weird things that go on in those woods. Black-eyed girl, big man, cult activity, weird cemeteries, alien sightings etc etc. Most of the locals have witnessed something weird go on in those woods which has widely been reported. But I wanted to talk about a few experiences I've had from living in the town first. I'll start with the experiences from my parents' house. So, this town is an ex-miners community. Most of the town is now built on top of the old mines, including my parents' house. My parents' house is, in my opinion, 100% haunted. There's certain parts of the house I won't go into on my own. So, let's start from the beginning. We moved into this house back in 1999. Things would happen, like things would go missing and turn up in weird places, but nothing major. Things started to pick up over time. One night my dad, who used to believe there was no such thing as ghosts, was up late doing paperwork. He heard footsteps on the stairs and thought it was my mom coming down. After they reached the hallway they stopped. He thought this was a bit odd and was about to get up to see what was going on. That was when his glass of wine slid across the entire dining room table and smashed up against the wall. Another experience my dad had was when he fell asleep on the sofa and said he was thrown across the room and he heard a man's voice tell him to go to bed. Personal experience that I've had in that house include seeing an apparition of some old style boots walk behind me in the mirror, footsteps and voices heard in the hallway/dining room at night. The whole family has seen things move across tables in the fireplace. The things that creep me out the most is that we have all seen the face of a man appear on the living room window. The front of my parents' house has a very long driveway, so we know it's not just someone walking past. We've all seen it, including visitors to our house, and everyone has described it in the same way. The one experience that sticks with me the most is a time I was washing the dishes in the kitchen. It was pitch black outside but all the kitchen lights were on, and you could see into the hallway. I saw the reflection of what I thought was my dad walking past behind me. I even felt someone walk past behind me. He carried on walking into the next room, which is a downstairs toilet. I started talking to him and thought it was a bit rude he didn't answer me. I then walked into the living room to find my dad sitting there. I asked him why he didn't answer me, and his response was he hadn't moved from the living room all night. But I know I saw a man walk past me. The room that creeps everyone out, the dining room. This room is an extension onto the house and there is an archway connecting to the next room. There is something about this room and that archway that unsettles everyone. This is where a lot of the apparition activity has been spotted, including shadows, footsteps and just a general unsettling feeling. I have also experienced someone tapping on the window from the outside of the dining room while I was home alone. The outside of the window is the garden, which is only accessible through the back door of the house. There's so many experiences that I want to talk about, which happened in my hometown. I feel like this could be a few parts. I just want to point out I've been on a few local ghost hunts and have met a fair few mediums. They've all said I'm a sensitive, which is apparently someone who isn't psychic, but is able to sense/see more than the average person. Which honestly would explain a lot, because I have witnessed a lot of weird things. The town is just as haunted as the woods. Part 2. The little girl. I visited my parents' house this evening for dinner, which reminded me of a few more experience that I'd had in the house which I'd missed out of my last post. So, back when I was 18 I worked nights. I came home at 7 AM on a Saturday morning with my now fiancé. We used to work together, which is how we met. We were always super quiet in the morning because everyone else would still be in bed. We went straight into the kitchen as usual and clicked on the kettle to make a post-work brew before bed. I also forgot to point out in my last post that the very active dining room is the room attached to the kitchen, so you walk through it to enter the kitchen. Myself and my partner were quietly chatting away when we heard footsteps in the hallway which entered the dining room and abruptly stopped. We both heard as clear as day a woman start laughing. We both whipped our heads around thinking it would be my mom, but obviously there was no one there. Everyone else in the house was still asleep in bed. The following evening, when I woke up, I spoke to my mom about what had happened in the kitchen. She told me that she had also been experiencing weird things go on in the house that week. At this point we were used to the spirit of the man that lived in our house, but this was something else. It felt sinister. The following weeks brought some odd activity in the house. I and the rest of the household on different occasions heard a little girl skipping and laughing in the hallway. Female whispers and crying could also be heard in the night. My mom went to see a friend after this who was a psychic. She explained to my mom that this little girl had come into contact with her while in the local town. The girl had taken a liking to my mom and decided to follow her home. It wasn't the first time someone had come to see this psychic about this girl. Apparently she had followed a few people home. We decided to get the house cleansed to send this girl home. However, the male spirit that we have nicknamed John still remains in the house to this day. Although the spirit of the girl has now left the house, there was something very unsettling about it being there. That atmosphere at the time changed in the house, and everyone seemed on edge. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.